as much as I'd love to live on a Bitcoin standard, frankly, I don't mind paying fiat for things because, I mean, there's this idea of Gresham's law, if you've ever heard of it. Gresham's law is basically that if there are two types of currencies, right, people are going to spend the worse or the weaker of them because they'd rather save the better, right? And this happened over time throughout the millennia, right? I mean, at one point, we transacted in beads or salt or copper or silver, right? During those transition periods, if you and I were transacting in beads, but suddenly copper or silver shows up and you're still accepting beads, I'm like, bro, I'm going to pay you beads because I'm going to keep the silver, right? So, yeah, I mean, we're going to be straddling it for a while, and I'm not one of these who thinks the dollar is going to implode anytime soon. Like I said, it's the tallest midget. It doesn't make it tall, but it's the strongest of the weak. And candidly, this is why I think the governments of the world are going after these stablecoin legislation packages, like in the United States specifically, because, as the dollar loses its dominance, certainly through the petrodollar being threatened, with BRICS countries specifically saying, hey, why do we need US dollars to transact when we could use Bitcoin or whatever else? The US government needed a way to maintain its hegemony and its dominance. And what better way to do that than to tether all of crypto and or Bitcoin via stable coins to the US dollar?
Okay, so that's what you think they're doing with the stable coins.
Absolutely. I mean, it's twofold, right? One is they can use compliance as a backdoor to do centralized currencies, centralized digital bank currencies, so they can program the money, track you, control you. But also, the United States, if it loses its dollar dominance by way of the petrodollar, it's now lost its ability to distribute the inflationary impacts of the infinite money printing across the world, which it has done since, oh, by the way, 1971. It's not long after we broke the dollar peg that we secured an agreement with Saudis to say, hey, we'll use our super powerful Navy. We'll give you safe rite of passage to distribute your oil all over the place. One caveat: you have to transact your oil transactions in US dollars. That helped us maintain that dominance despite having just defaulted against the world. Fast forward, we're losing that dominance of the petrodollar because people don't have to pay attention anymore to transacting with the US dollar. They can use Bitcoin or whatever. And, the US government's recognizing this. There's definitely a reason they prioritized the Genius Act, which in the United States, all legislation, you should assume that it's the opposite of what it's called, right? The Inflation Reduction Act printed 40% of the currency in circulation right now. It did anything but reduce inflation. So my working assumption here is that the Genius Act is anything but. And, certainly my suspicion is that this allows the US dollar to maintain its dominance globally, because now the biggest on-ramps and off-ramps into the crypto space will be this kind of legitimized stablecoin space because the US government has blessed it.
So would your preferred outcome of all of the discussions going on with the Trump administration, who want, they're talking about some sort of digital asset reserve. Obviously, all the Bitcoiners voted hoping that there would be a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Obviously, they wouldn't announce that 18 months out. That would be, just an insane decision. But is your hope like that Bitcoin would be either the sole part or a major part of that digital asset reserve, and that would form a base layer for like digital financial transactions going forwards?
The fact that you've got nation states, sovereign funds, corporate treasuries, and the like all coming in, and the big boys now are kind of in the Bitcoin space. That makes a lot of folks who were more cypherpunk, minded a little nervous. But the whole idea of Bitcoin specifically is it's for you and it's for your enemies, right? We don't have to agree, but if we agree on these rules, this thing can exist as an algorithm. It's just math, it's math and energy, right? We can agree that those things are pure and sound. So we don't necessarily, which is why, again, the BRICS countries can agree to transact in it, because one doesn't have to trust the other. They all just trust this thing, right? So, ultimately, am I eager for nation states to kind of throw their weight around? Certainly not. I'm libertarian minded, and I think third party risk is the worst in all facets of life. That's kind of essentially my thesis of the book. But I encourage everyone who wants the soundest financial foundation, to hold something that can't be corrupted and printed into infinity. Because again, going back to math, if you have something that's finite divided by something that's going to zero, which all of fiat currency is, math just says it goes to infinity, right? So what does that mean? I don't know. At some point, I think you'll just be transacting in how much something costs in Satoshis versus this Satoshi is worth this many dollars, right? We're not going to be doing those calculations anymore. I would, if the government wants to get a hold of this $37 trillion in debt, which, really is actually more like 74 if you look at all of what they already have line of sight to with Social Security and Medicare, unfunded liabilities. If you look at what's already there, it's already in the 70s in terms of the trillions of dollars of debt. That is a feature, not a bug, a fiat. And the only way the government has any chance in not being steamrolled by that or totally drowned out by it is, in my opinion, adding Bitcoin to their strategic reserve, and that being a key part of it. Obviously, there's going to be some diversification, and they're going to do what they're going to do. But like everyone's portfolio who dabbles heavily in crypto, if you have Bitcoin and other coins, almost universally over time, the Bitcoin becomes a larger part of your overarching portfolio, just because it continues to, become more and more dominant. And that's the journey of most Bitcoiners is, they shitcoin for a while and then they're like, oh, wait, maybe Fartcoin isn't the best idea. Maybe I should do something more sound like Bitcoin.
Yeah. Well, we've all been burnt by the occasional being like, no, this is the meme coin for this is going to do 1,000x.
No, Jizz coin's going to be the best. It's like, oh God.
I mean, I don't know how people didn't see the scams coming. Honestly, I feel like if you got scammed by a meme coin, like, you deserve to have lost that money.
I don't disagree with you. I mean, look, Bitcoin has historically been guilty by association too, because for those who aren't in the space, they associate them all as crypto, then in one big basket.
Yeah.
Again, with the thesis of my book, you have a proof of work. And this goes back to, everyday life. Like, there is no easy pill to get fit, right? Yeah, there's Ozempic and there's whatever else, which, by the way, just makes you stake yourself to it for life. Go figure. You have to work. You have to eat healthier and work hard and lift heavy stuff, right? Anything worth achieving is proof of work. Proof of stake was built to be more efficient and to get around that hard work, right? But inevitably, this is a path that, of good intentions that leads you to hell, or at least a much worse off existence, right? And so that's all of these altcoins. Like, I think some of them, had some valid ideas where they thought Web3 is going to take over, and maybe it does. Like, it's like asking which company won as the internet company. Well, if you invested in, Yahoo or whatever back in the day, you probably did a hell of a good job, even though, at this point it's Google or Alphabet or Meta or whatever, right? There is no one thing that wins it all. But I do think from what a cryptocurrency is meant to do, it's two different things. One is tokenizing the participation in Web3, which is kind of the altcoin closer to the shitcoin or scams. And then you have this other thing, which is a store of value that's predicated upon work, which can't be bastardized. And I think there's room for both. I just think they're solving for two different problems, and they're all guilt by association when it comes to the scammers. And
so, do you? Sorry. Would you advocate for like a return to the gold standard?
Certainly. I mean, the problem I see in returning to the gold standard is you're still relying upon third party for safe storage of gold. And in doing so, you inevitably find yourself back at the goldsmith example. This is the reason why I balk at the idea that Bitcoin is somehow digital gold, or gold is physical Bitcoin, or whatever.
Yeah, I've seen you argue about this. Do you want to explain to people why? Because I've had a number of people on who have discussed Bitcoin as digital gold. People see it as the future of currency transactions. I've had people talk about it as more akin to a central bank, as like a base layer for potential other financial systems to be built on top of it. Like, why is it not digital gold? And what comparison would you make to anything that we have? Or maybe there isn't anything that fits.
I don't think there is. I think it's as close as you can come to making it kind of a tangible parallel or metaphor for people. So I don't poo-poo it altogether. Like, it's as close as we can get to making it relatable for people who do understand gold and don't understand Bitcoin. So I'll grant that. My whole premise is the limitations of gold, namely safe storage of gold, safe transport of gold, and divisibility, right? Because if I have a brick of gold and the shit hits the fan, like, what good is it going to be actually? Like, you have a bunch of goods and we're in the dystopian eventuality, right? Am I shaving off, right, gold shavings, and how much for you, right? And how, like, the whole thing just doesn't make any sense. And so these limitations of gold were literally what gave rise to fiat in the first place. These receipts that we were talking about before. So would I love us to go back to a gold standard? Sure. Who's going to house the gold? The same people right now who promised us an audit of Fort Knox, who still have yet to deliver on that.
Where's the audit? I want the
audit.
I want to know. Like,
the people talking about auditing it now are the quietest ones about it. It's like they got read in to the fact that maybe there is no gold, or I don't know. Like, we're just left here to speculate. It should be easy enough. Snap a picture of the pallets and pallets and pallets of gold, right? Conversely, Bitcoin is audited every 10 minutes. Every time there's a block added to the chain, and I run both Bitcoin miners and a node. I'm helping to codify the next block, and I'm checking as a node runner. All of the blocks are legit. So, like, literally, you have real-time auditing, you have infinite divisibility, you have immutability, and you have absolutely finite supply, which, by the way, that's another thing with gold. I just heard that an asteroid has, like, a quadrillion bazillion pounds of gold on it. It's for ounces. And I'm like, oh, so, like, what happens if, like, that actually is harvested?
Good news, everyone. My book about GameStop, the craziest story ever told, is now finished. Well, almost. Still waiting for the final draft. So, in the meantime, I think you should look at pre-ordering it or any one of the multiple fantastic, beautiful t-shirts that I have designed in order to sell with the book. Thank you, everyone, for your patience over the last few years while I have been finishing it very slowly. And I am really, really excited for people to read it. Link is in the description below. Enjoy the podcast.